The courtroom doors slammed shut, and every eye turned toward the man in chains. Marcus Johnson shuffled forward, his orange prison uniform swallowing the last of his dignity. The cuffs bit into his wrists. The bailiff's grip was tight on his shoulder. Somewhere behind him, he heard a small voice choke back a sob. Emma, his daughter, 8 years old, clutching her grandmother's hand, her eyes red and swollen from crying that hadn't stopped in weeks. All rise. The prosecutor stood first, smoothing his jacket, a thin smile on his lips. He had already won. Everyone in the room could feel it. Your Honor, he said, voice ringing with false sympathy. The state recommends 25 years for armed robbery and murder. 25 years. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. 25 years for a crime he never committed. 25 years that would steal every birthday, every school recital, every ordinary Tuesday he had left with his daughter. He was innocent. He knew it in his bones. But innocence meant nothing to a system that had already decided who he was the moment he was born poor. The side door opened. The judge walked in, robes flowing, papers in hand, eyes fixed on the folder in front of her. This was routine for her. Another case, another name on a docket. Marcus lifted his head, more out of exhaustion than hope. Then he saw her face, and he froze. The judge stopped mid-step. Her papers hovered in her hand. Her breath caught somewhere in her throat. She knew that face. She would never forget that face. The rain, the broken-down car, the stranger who gave away his last dollar and his own jacket to a woman he owed nothing to. Marcus stared back at her, disbelief washing over him, his heart pounding so loud he was sure the whole courtroom could hear it. 6 months earlier, neither of them could have imagined this moment would come. 6 months earlier, Marcus Johnson was just a tired father trying to survive. He worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, stacking shifts at a warehouse by day and driving deliveries by night. He came home smelling like diesel and sweat, and still, every single night, he knelt beside Emma's bed and asked her about her day like it was the most important thing in the world. Their apartment was small. The heater rattled. The paint peeled in the corners. But Emma never complained, because her father made her feel like they had everything they needed. Daddy, she told her friends at school, says kindness is something nobody can steal. He believed that with his whole heart, even when his wallet was empty, even when the refrigerator held nothing but eggs and half a loaf of bread. Marcus gave what he could, his time, his energy, a ride to a neighbor whose car wouldn't start, groceries carried up 4 flights of stairs for the old man on the 3rd floor. People in the building loved him for it. They called him the kind of man this world didn't make enough of anymore. But kindness didn't pay rent. And some nights, Marcus lay awake wondering if being good was enough, or if he was just fooling himself into thinking it mattered. One evening, everything nearly proved him right, and then, without warning, proved him wrong in a way he never expected. The sky had opened up into a violent storm. Thunder rattled the windows of the bus he rode home. Marcus stepped off into sheets of rain, his umbrella useless against the wind, his last $20 folded carefully in his pocket. Just enough for groceries, just enough to make sure Emma didn't go to bed hungry again. He hurried down the flooding street, head low, when he saw her. An elderly woman stood beside a stalled luxury car, drenched to the bone, shivering, alone. Cars rushed past, splashing her further, no one stopping. No one even slowing down. Marcus hesitated. He thought about Emma waiting at home. He thought about the $20 in his pocket, the only thing standing between his daughter and an empty stomach. Then he thought about what kind of father he wanted to be. He walked over. Ma'am, are you all right? She looked up at him, startled, her lips trembling from the cold. My phone died. No one will stop. I've called for a tow, but no one's coming. The flooding. Here. Marcus pulled off his jacket without a second thought and wrapped it around her shoulders. He handed her his umbrella. I can't take this, she protested. You're already soaked. I'll be fine. You won't be, if you stay out here much longer. He flagged down a passing taxi, using the last of his cash to pay the driver before the woman had even settled inside. She stared at him through the open door, stunned. Why? She asked. Why would you help a complete stranger like this? You don't know me. Marcus smiled, rain dripping down his face. Because someday, my daughter might need a stranger's kindness. I'd want somebody to do the same for her. The woman's eyes filled with tears, she quickly blinked away. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small gold bracelet, offering it to him. Please, let me repay you. Marcus gently pushed her hand back. Keep it. I didn't do this for a reward. She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to memorize his face. What's your name? Marcus. She opened her mouth as if to say something else, to tell him who she was, what she did for a living, how rare a man like him truly was. But the words caught in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, and the taxi pulled away into the storm. Marcus walked the rest of the way home empty-handed and soaked to the bone. When he opened the door, Emma ran to him anyway, wrapping her small arms around his waist. "Where's dinner, Daddy?" He knelt down, brushing wet hair from her face. "How about we make pancakes for dinner tonight? Just the two of us." She giggled like it was the greatest idea in the world, and for a moment, Marcus forgot about the empty pantry, the aching cold, the $20 gone. He had given everything he had to a stranger, and somehow, he still felt like the richest man alive. He never learned her name. He never thought about her again. He had no idea that decision, one small act of kindness in the pouring rain, had just planted a seed that would decide whether he lived free or died in a prison cell. For a while, life started looking up. A foreman at a construction site noticed how hard Marcus worked and offered him a steady job, better pay, real benefits, a future finally within reach. Marcus came home that night and swung Emma around the living room until she was breathless with laughter. "We're gonna be okay, baby girl," he told her. "I promise you, we're gonna be okay." For 2 weeks, it felt true. Marcus started saving. He talked about moving to a bigger apartment, one with a room just for Emma, one with a working heater. He let himself hope again. Then, on a Thursday evening, walking home from the bus stop, Marcus heard screaming. A jewelry store alarm blared down the block. 2 masked men burst through the shattered front doors, guns in hand, sprinting toward a getaway car. In their panic, a young child, no older than 6, froze in the middle of the street, directly in the path of a speeding vehicle trying to flee the scene. Marcus didn't think. He dove, scooping the child into his arms and rolling onto the sidewalk just as the car screeched past, missing them by inches. The robbers vanished into the night. Police arrived moments later to chaos, sirens, screaming bystanders, a shattered storefront. And there was Marcus, breathing hard, adrenaline still coursing through him, a stranger's child clutched protectively against his chest. "That's him. That's one of them," a voice shouted from the crowd. Marcus turned, confused. "What? No, I just saved this kid, I didn't." But panic spreads faster than truth. In the chaos, in the darkness, in the fear of the moment, a terrified witness pointed at the only man still standing near the scene. The security footage was grainy, partial, useless. The real robbers were already gone, swallowed by the night, never to be seen again. Marcus was placed in handcuffs before he could even catch his breath. "There's been a mistake," he kept saying, over and over, as the officers pushed him into the back of the patrol car. "I saved that little girl. Ask her, ask anyone." No one was listening. Emma watched from their apartment window as police lights painted the walls red and blue. She ran down the stairs, ran into the street, screaming for her father as the car pulled away. "Daddy, Daddy, don't go." Marcus pressed his hand against the glass, tears streaming down his face, watching his daughter grow smaller and smaller until she disappeared completely. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody in that courtroom would ever tell him, was that the robbery had never been random at all. It had been planned, financed, and orchestrated by a wealthy businessman named Gerald Voss, a man who owed dangerous people money and needed a fast, untraceable payout. Voss had bribed a security guard to disable half the store's cameras. He had paid off a shaky witness to point fingers at whoever happened to be standing nearby. He had even reached 2 lower-level investigators, ensuring the case moved quickly, quietly, and without complications. Marcus was perfect for the frame. Poor. No connections. No money for a real defense. Exactly the kind of man the system would chew up and never think twice about. His court-appointed lawyer met with him for less than 20 minutes total before the trial began. Evidence that could have cleared him mysteriously went missing. Witnesses who might have vouched for his character were never called. The trial lasted barely 3 days. Guilty on all counts. Emma was sent to live with her elderly grandmother, a woman barely able to climb her own stairs, let alone raise a grieving 8-year-old alone. Marcus was sent to a state prison 200 miles away, where visits would be rare and hope would be rarer still. For months, Marcus existed rather than lived. He wrote letters to Emma he wasn't sure she ever received. He stared at the ceiling of his cell at night, replaying the storm, the courtroom, the moment everything fell apart, searching for some version of events where he had done something differently. There wasn't one. He had done nothing wrong, and it hadn't mattered at all. Then, one morning, a guard slid an envelope through the bars. A final appeal had been granted. His case would be reviewed. One last chance. buried deep in a system that rarely gave second chances to men like him. He didn't let himself hope. Hope had already betrayed him once. But he showed up to that courtroom anyway, chains around his wrists, prepared to hear the same verdict all over again. And that is where our story began, with Marcus looking up and freezing as the judge walked in. Before you find out what happens next, if this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this one are exactly what this channel is built for. Drop a comment below. Have you ever done something kind for a stranger, expecting nothing back? I want to hear it. Now, let's get back to Marcus. The judge stood frozen at the front of the courtroom, the folder trembling slightly in her hand. She remembered every detail of that rainy night. The jacket around her shoulders, the umbrella pressed into her hands, the young father who had given away his last $20 without a second thought. She remembered asking his name. Marcus. She had never forgotten it. She forced herself to breathe, to remain composed, to be the professional the room expected her to be. But her mind raced. This man, chained, convicted, sentenced to 25 years, was the same man who had knelt in a flooded street to help a stranger who could give him nothing in return. Could a man capable of that kind of selflessness really be a murderer? A thief? Something inside her refused to accept it. Court is adjourned for recess, she announced abruptly, startling the prosecutor mid-sentence. I will review the case file personally before sentencing proceeds. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. This wasn't standard procedure. Judges didn't personally comb through evidence at this stage. That was what appeals were supposed to have already handled. But something about this case gnawed at her, refused to let her look away. That night, she sat alone in her office long after everyone else had gone home. The case file spread across her desk, coffee growing cold beside her. The inconsistencies started small. A timestamp on the security footage that didn't line up with the officer's reports. A witness statement that had been altered, not rewritten, but subtly adjusted in ways that changed its entire meaning. A second witness who was never called to testify at all, despite being present at the scene. She flipped through page after page, her pulse quickening with every new discrepancy she uncovered. By midnight, she picked up her phone. I need a full investigative team reassigned to this case, effective immediately, she told the detective on the other end. And I want eyes on everyone who touched this file the first time around. Within days, cracks in the case began to split wide open. Detectives traced the disabled security cameras back to a guard with a suspicious cash deposit in his account the same week as the robbery. That guard, faced with the possibility of his own prosecution, cracked under pressure and gave up the name investigators had been missing all along. Gerald Voss. It didn't take long after that. One of the actual robbers, cornered and desperate to avoid a harsher sentence, confessed everything. The plan, the payoff, the deliberate framing of an innocent bystander who simply happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Marcus Johnson had never been anything more than a convenient scapegoat. When the judge called an emergency hearing to present the new evidence, the courtroom was packed. Marcus sat at the defendant's table, hands still shaking, almost afraid to let himself believe what was happening. The prosecutor, the same man who had once smiled with such certainty, now sat pale and silent as the truth unraveled in front of everyone. In light of newly discovered evidence, the judge announced, her voice steady but her eyes glistening, including a full confession implicating another individual entirely, this court finds that Marcus Johnson's conviction cannot stand. She paused, looking directly at him. Mr. Johnson, on behalf of this court, I am deeply sorry for what you have endured. You are free to go. The room erupted. Marcus's lawyer gripped his shoulder. Somewhere behind him, he heard a voice he would know anywhere. Daddy. Emma sprinted down the aisle before anyone could stop her, throwing herself into his arms the moment the chains came off his wrists. Marcus dropped to his knees and held his daughter so tightly he thought he might never let go again, tears streaming freely down both their faces. I told you, he whispered into her hair, voice breaking. I told you we'd be okay. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the judge as she stepped out into the afternoon sun. Your Honor, what made you personally reopen this case? What made you question a conviction that had already been decided? She glanced past the cameras, finding Marcus standing at the bottom of the steps, Emma's small hand wrapped tightly in his. Justice, she said slowly, begins by seeing people as they truly are, not just as they appear on paper, not just as a name on a case file. Marcus approached her as the crowd began to part, still holding Emma close. Thank you, he said quietly. I don't even know how to. You already gave me everything I needed. The judge interrupted gently. That night in the rain. You helped me long before I ever had the chance to help you. Marcus shook his head, overwhelmed. I never expected anything in return. I promise you, I wasn't looking for. I know, she said, a small smile breaking through. That's exactly why it mattered. The best kindness never expects anything back. Months later, Marcus used his settlement from the wrongful conviction to launch a small community foundation dedicated to supporting families of the wrongfully accused, covering legal fees, providing emotional support, making sure no other father had to watch his daughter scream his name through the window of a departing patrol car. Emma, now certain of exactly what she wanted to become when she grew up, began telling everyone at school that she was going to be a lawyer one day, just like the judge who saved her father. And somewhere, in the quiet moments before sleep, Marcus still thought about that storm, about the choice he almost didn't make, about the $20 he gave away without hesitation, about how close he came to walking past that stranded car and continuing on toward home. Kindness is never wasted. Sometimes, it disappears into the rain, forgotten by everyone except the person who gave it, only to return, unannounced, exactly when your darkest storm arrives. If this story moved you, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories just like it. New videos drop every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let me know in the comments what part of Marcus's story hit you the hardest. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.